welcome to this episode of the Corporate Escapists TV show and podcast. I'm your host, Christine Innes. I'm so delighted because I've got the very amazing Nathan joining us, who is also our host for the other podcast that I run of Justice Plan. So welcome, Nathan, and thank you again for all the amazing work that you do for me.
No, of course. It's been a privilege hosting seasons 2, 3, and we're almost about to finish 4 as time of recording this episode. So it's I've had the privilege of recording for you over I think we're tipping around. I've done personally done about 50 episodes. So
Yeah.
it's been really nice to connect with fellow wedding vendors, both within my network and outside of it. And it's just talking so many different types of things and so many wonderful, talented people across the world. It's been a real pleasure. So I appreciate the opportunity to head it up and head up that project. And it's been a pleasure working with you so far.
Oh, it's amazing. I'm going to get you to quickly introduce yourself because there's so many things that I want to ask you because you are a man of many talents.
Sure. Well, my name is Nathan Cassar, Master of Ceremonies. I specialize in weddings, event, corporate, you name it. I've done virtually everything, and I'm based here in Sydney. I love making people basically do one thing: is to remember the experience and have a massive smile on their face due to my ability to read a room, host a night, and just really get to know people and connect.
Yeah, you are amazing at what you do. And like one of the things that I really appreciate with what you do, because I know what it's like, you juggle many hats. And one of the things I always say to my clients is that you need to be visible. And that's exactly what you do. And I think that's also what makes your business like quite successful, because if we're not visible ourselves, how are people going to know what we do and also what it's like to work with us?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I've ever since I escaped from the corporate world from Princess Cruises, I must say I was more or less forcibly, the eject button was pushed out of me without me actually consenting to it back for COVID reasons. But back in 2019. But when I left and I had to make a choice about whether or not I just go back to an industry that's not the same anymore, or if I do my own thing, the scariest thing about doing your own thing, as I do now as a professional MC full time, is that you're 100% correct. Success really does come down to being extremely visible because I'm working in entertainment. And so entertainment is, as everyone knows, it's cutthroat. Everyone's doing the same thing as you. So what makes you different is the biggest question people have when they want to choose you. But then also too, it's Australia has, as we all know, tall poppy syndrome. And having lived and worked in the States where, particularly in the corporate environment where they want you to champion your efforts. If you don't champion what you do, of course, there's limits still. And there's definitely very easy ways of you being an egotist in that environment as well. But it's a lot easier and encouraged for you to be the kind of person that goes to your boss and says, hey, by the way, like I've just improved the budget by 10% this quarter, or I just innovated this thing, make sure you check it. That is appreciated. And I was actually encouraged as part of my KPIs when I was working over there. Here, as much as on the surface, managers and people around you will say, oh, like champion your efforts. Often the tall poppy, scythes are about coming through the fields to cut your pejorative head off. In this moment, you put your head above the crowd because of the way that we are as Australians. And so it's been a fine line, but I've enjoyed finding that balance of genuine gratitude about being able to say, hey, I won this award, or I've started this new part of my pillar of my business, or I've just had this really great interaction with a client, or whatever it may be. But then also not being afraid to put my hand up and say, no, everyone, hi, I actually did this thing and I'm really proud of it. And if you would like to congratulate me for it, that's cool, because I will be so appreciative you do. And it'll be a beautiful, relationship where I thank you genuinely, and that people, and it gives your audience an opportunity to really know you and understand you. And so a lot of my visibility and success has come from just putting my hand up and saying, hey, I did this thing and I'm really happy about it. And if you do offer something back in return, I'll be humbly grateful for it.
Yeah. In weddings, because let's face it, every couple has their own vision for their day. And, we all get to a point where we know we're not going to be everyone's cup of tea as well.
Mm.
And it's also a part of just saying, okay, well, this is my style, this is who I am.
Mm,
And when we're really authentic, like, I think that's what you're great at, is like just showing up authentically as yourself. Because a lot of people I see in, different industries, they just wear all these masks, and how they show up online, and then when you meet them in person, they're two completely different people.
mm.
And you can't do that at weddings because they're buying that persona for their wedding.
Yeah, 100%. And also audiences are very, look, they may not be as astute as I am, as somebody who used to like train and audit performers on stage when I was working for Princess, and now have an eye for seeing what, sort of really looking within an entertainer on stage. But audiences do generally sort of have like a hive mind idea of like, oh, I think this guy's full of it, or wow, that was a really authentic experience, because it's basic, just human to human connection. And so you're 100% correct that it really is important that, look, don't get me wrong, you need to have your professional self on. There's a difference between being authentic of like, I'm my authentic Netflix 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock on Saturday morning, cuddled up, with the blinds closed kind of authentic self, versus like I'm my most authentic self, professional sense in the office. Those are very still distinctive parts of your authentic self. But when you show up and you give people whom you are and don't bring up barriers or try to uh, mold yourself in ways that you think that other person is going to accept better than just who you are, A, you don't get yourself caught up in any traps, and B, you just allow people to generally understand you much faster and much more authentically and genuinely than having to come up with these contrived masks of who you are and what did I tell that person that week and everything else like that. I just don't bother with any of that when I'm on stage. I'm the same person when you see me on stage as you see me off. I'm not going to shy away from a conversation. I'm not going to be somebody who doesn't want to engage or socialize or look presentable and look personable when I'm talking proudly on stage on the microphone and then sort of just dip to the green room afterwards. You definitely need to have that through thread of what is most authentically to you at every interaction and what you do in your working environment.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you know, one of the things that I've actually really found quite interesting, and I'd love your thoughts on this, is
Hmm.
that personal brand and weddings are actually so connected, because your wedding really is the highlight of your own personal brand, and you're bringing like two brands together as such.
Hmm.
And I actually think that it's really important that, in personal branding, like in business, like we need to know who we are, like who our audience is.
Hmm.
But it's also like, you dealing in weddings is they're bringing through that actual love story, that brand, and actually combining it together as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, people when they're picking me for their weddings, and also by extension for my corporate clients as well, when they're trying to discover, what is the right fit for their particular type of event, they want to. You're right, 100%. My personal brand and what I represent and the values I put out and the way that I present myself, may it be the way I dress, the way that I speak on any talk to camera or any podcast I've done, anything, any touch point that an audience, that a wedding couple or a corporate client is going to be seeing of me before they decide to pull the trigger and book me, they are interested in making sure that they resonate with that, because I'm the front runner representative of them as a couple and as a corporate entity. Once I step onto the microphone and come out, and you're as a wedding couple, you're essentially broadcasting to your audience, this is the kind of wedding we're going to have, because this is the kind of guy slash gal that we're getting on the microphone to set the tone, energy, and sort of overall atmosphere of the evening. And the same goes from my corporate world, is that, this is the kind of person that is going to be speaking on behalf of the CEO, the execs, the shareholders, the board, all the stakeholders. Like, it is a massive responsibility. And so it's, as you said a bit earlier on about we're not everyone's cup of tea. I much prefer when I don't book a gig, because there's been an established decision in the process of deciding whom to be the MC, that I'm just not the person that they're hoping to represent them. And this goes for both corporate and weddings. I'd much rather not do a wedding or an event where I'm not wanted, for that reason, as opposed to one where I'm wholly embraced. There's an excitement by the client and the couple to actually have me in the room and to deliver what I do. That's when things come to life. And absolutely, you really want to, when you're picking someone like myself or similar services, you need them to be the 100% wholesome representation of the brand or the energy or the vibe that you're going for.
Yeah, absolutely. What's been your biggest learning curve being in business for yourself?
Mm. Oh, wow. Okay. The biggest learning curve that I've had is, I'm gonna say, I think, yeah, this is it. Going from when I was working on cruise ships as a former cruise director and working for corporate, where you're working in an environment where a lot of it is very curated for you. As an example, when I was working on ships full time, you get a schedule every day, you adhere to that schedule. There's a grander plan that someone way above you is still putting together, and then that above the captain is the corporate head office that I eventually used to work for. There's a grander plan at scheme that essentially you are just playing one piece of the puzzle for. And as long as you play that well and you're a shining gem in that space, sure, there's opportunity for you to move and to make ladder movements in your career and so forth. But you're executing a vision that's not your own. You may adopt it, you may embrace the values of the company, but it's not your own sort of space. One thing I had to do when I came back home and built my own business as a full-time MC was that I had to now embody myself, my own. I had to dictate my schedule, how much time I devoted during a day to put into my business, what I put onto my calendar, how much discipline I had in terms of waking up at, say, 8 o'clock versus 10 o'clock in the morning to get out there and do things. And a whole bunch of other things that required me to really understand who I was, what brand values I was going to put out there into the world, and then put pen to paper and then, keyboard to digital screen, and to actually be convicted and to stand by something that was my own desire to put out there. And I think that's just something that you obviously build over time, and you don't get that when you're working for a boss and a corporate hierarchy structure and the kind of environment I used to work in.
Yeah, absolutely. What about personally? What have you learned about yourself
I've
being
learned that I'm even more resilient than I thought I was. I
mm,
was I was bullied as a child, and so I was a very introverted child from the age of 5. But then I built a lot of my own personal uh, resilience through my network, my ability to
mm,
become a public speaker in school, and a whole bunch of other things that I lent on, and projects I developed, such as the anti-bullying program in schools, and a whole bunch of different things that I did to sort of build myself to the point where I got to work on a cruise ship as an entertainer. But even beyond that, I didn't truly understand a level of resilience that I'd have to go through until I was forced to come home, removed from my position at sort of the opportunity to and the mobility to work in the cruise industry in the way that I was before because of COVID. And I had to really figure out what the next step was. And I was up against this wall of the fact that even as an Australian citizen, because of my foreign work experience, Australia really does not like to hire people with too much significant foreign work experience at lower junior levels. And so I had to be extraordinarily resilient, more than I'd ever had before, which was to say, right, I'm going to draw a line in the sand. I'm going to make a conviction. I'm not going to go back to that other structured job, which I was offered to go back to. And instead, I'm going to honor the contracts I have, and I'm going to really make this my own. And there were days and days and weeks that would go on by, and I would look at the calendar
mm.
and go, how am I going to handle this? How am I going to make money? How are people going to see me against the other sea of people who I both compete in, quote unquote, but also, collaborate with in the same niche environment? But yeah, I've come out on top, I guess. And now I confidently can say that I have a reputation within the industry. Haven't learnt everything, haven't scaled every mountain by any stretch, but certainly that level of personal resilience is something that I treasure and I'm proud of that I've been able to accomplish.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like that's a big thing. Like, like business is tough. Like it's not an easy
Hmm.
thing. And I actually always congratulate anybody who decides to start a business because like we can all have the concept, but when you actually take the action to start it, it takes a big leap of courage and faith within yourself as
Hmm.
well.
Yeah, it certainly does. And you are betting on yourself, particularly if you start a small
Mm,
business, a micro business like myself, that, everything that you've learned up to that point and every mindset you have, maybe every degree you might have, or any conversation you've ever had with someone else in your life who has their own business is going to somehow influence the way that you approach yours. And eventually you're going to find your own foundation and your own
yeah.
concrete in the sand. And so it's really daunting at the beginning because you just don't know if any of the decisions you're making are either going to be complete financial flops or if they're going to be some of the greatest pieces moved on the chessboard of all time in your career. And so you really just got to kind of have that conviction through and through at every juncture. And don't get me wrong, not every decision I've made in my business has been correct. I've, spent campaigns on Google Ads where I realized after 3 months that I've sunk money down the drain, either because I didn't optimize it properly or I picked the wrong agency to go with or
Mm,
whatever, or it was the wrong season or wrong timing to do it or whatever it may be. It's just
yeah.
one example of many where I've identified something that was not correct. And yes, in some way it could have been detrimental if I decided to take the negativity of that and internalize it. But instead it was just, okay, lesson learned. Now let's move on. I've still got all these 100 other amazing things that I'm sitting on. So let's continue to build off that rather than the one or two things that I've recently done that, haven't yielded the results that I was hoping for.
Yeah. What's the biggest achievement so far in business for you?
Look, if I separate those into a couple of categories, I mean, one, if I talk in terms of awards, for instance, I mean, that's one type of achievement I could argue. Very recently, I was amongst many that I've accomplished over 30 awards in my career so far, but one that was very significant for me was the ABA Wedding Awards in New South Wales, being awarded number one in New South Wales this year after a number of years of being runner-up. So for me, both in terms of the way I relate to my community of my fellow peers in the wedding industry, but also sort of more generally as an industry operator, as a reflection of my couples who voted for me in that sense. It was a massive, massive milestone in my career and only just happened recently. But I think if I talk in terms of more sort of, less sort of, for a better phrase, superficial things like awards and things like that, I would say, having the kind of events that I'm beginning to attract, I think is definitely something that's worthy of attention. Like, for instance, being asked to do for several years in a row the Sydney Marathon event, where this year I was doing five different events, including the start line for mini marathon and the main Sydney Marathon, and my voice broadcasting to over 35,000 people going through the start chute. Like those kind of moments that are like really profound, because not just because of the sort of the public platform that represents, but because I would never have got that gig back in 2021 when I started, or 2022 for better argument, because 21 was basically just COVID lockdowns. But like it's essentially like there is a progression when I reflect upon that, in terms of, yes, I started working with Sydney Marathon back in 2023, which was already amazing, but the way that has progressed as a relationship with the client, but also the trust that they have in me to go onto a bigger and better platform for arguably one of Australia's biggest public events in the entire calendar now. That for me feels super special, and it's just a good sign that I'm moving in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also too, like as much as like, there's a lot of moving parts in business, but we also need a validation in a way, like to sort of say, oh, okay, yes, we are moving in the right direction. We are growing, we are expanding, and that's how we also get that, because sometimes we're always like busy, off doing everything else. But, it's getting those, validations, it's getting those thank yous from our clients, to say you've done a great job. And it's also that reward of going, oh my goodness, it's actually all worth it as well.
And it's okay to embrace that. I think that goes back
Yes.
to what I was saying earlier about, the fears that people have of tall poppy syndrome, and as an extension,
Mm.
um, uh, uh, imposter syndrome, where essentially, people are afraid to embrace that, either through this sort of concocted ire from their peers that they're going to get, which doesn't happen as much as they think it does. And also, I think if you're not breaking any eggs in around you, then you're not baking any cake. So I think you need to
Yeah.
be aware of that. But then secondly, you do need to embrace those moments for yourself, because there's so many out there that give you the opportunity to be able to celebrate for yourself, even if it's just becoming a finalist and getting into a room of other people who have achieved that same level as you. It doesn't matter about the trophy, just being in the room is great. But then also just other things in general, just like being able to take toll of the fact that at the end of the year and doing a recap and saying, okay, like what have I accomplished throughout this year? I've opened up a new product line, or I've established 10 new network partnerships, or I've done this and I've done that, and sort of looking at the numbers and going, I can actually celebrate this. I can go out for dinner and say, this is my celebratory sort of moment for this occasion, to say thank you to myself for having put the hard work in. It's not a achievement to burn out. There is nothing, there is no, I know there are people out there who do believe this, but I am a ardent believer that burnout is not an achievement you should be putting on a resume or a LinkedIn page or any form of badge you wear on your chest to say, I did it. I completely wore myself out to the point of exhaustion. It does. I don't know. I sympathize with anybody who's been through that. And certainly I've been close to those kind of moments in my life as well. And I'm sure they'll come in the future as well. But I don't personally believe that there is any honor or valor in that. It's much more respectable and sort of self-esteeming, if that's a word, to actually take pride in yourself and your own mental health and your own stability by saying, I'm going to take a breath, I'm going to take toll, I'm going to reflect, and I'm going to appreciate what I've accomplished so far.
Amazing. Well, I'm a big fan of you and everything that you do. And obviously, building a community, I think is, such an important part of business. And that's something that, like, I really want to honor you for that, because that's actually really what you do. Like, you've built a beautiful community of people who, really respect you. But also too, that level of respect when, you invite them on the show, or, they, mention you. I go out and they're like going, oh my God, Nathan. I'm like going, yeah, I know Nathan. Like, there's like, it's actually really incredible. So I really want to honor you for that, because I think in business, I'm a big believer that you need to have a community around you, because it is hard work, and having the right community around you is the most essential part as well, because we all have those moments. We all have those ups and downs, and, to have people around you to support you is really essential.
Well, thank you. And I really appreciate your kind words. And it's, it's one of sort of goes back to what I was just saying before. It was about it. I take toll and sort of appreciate, even micro moments like this where, the network is at play and the hard work has been reflected in the people that I know around me. And I think also it goes back to something that I always try to champion in my life, which is, you're the sum total, of your peers. And it really is critical to make sure you surround yourself with people who do, not just pat you on the back and are yes people and all that kind of stuff. That can be self-aggrandizing and feel good for like 2 seconds, just like, like a sugar rush or something a little bit more nefarious. But on a deeper level, being able to keep people in your life who appreciate you, who you're able to, on a bilateral level, able to, establish a level of exchange that is wholesome, that is constructive, that isn't always about just going, yay, you, and no negative, no constructive criticism sort of, thrown the other way as well. It's much more grounding and wholesome longer term, and you end up forging vastly better networks of people who, as you said, respect who you are, because they know that you're not somebody who's just there for the yeses and the pats on the backs and the awards. You're really truly there to be somebody who exists in a human being ecosystem of ups and downs, happiness and low moments, and you're there for people just as much as you appreciate when they're there for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we go, I want to ask you, there's two questions. First of all, is what's next for Nathan?
What's next? Well, the things I've really got my sights set on is building out my TV and presenter career. So at the moment, I have got a new TV show reel that I've produced with a TV mentor, Sharon Lynn, who's quite known in the TV space, a couple months back now. And so I'm I've just been a bit busy, haven't been able to really put much use to it yet. But certainly, in these next coming months, as we begin to wind up through the bigger Q4 part of the year, it's my goal, particularly moving into my fifth year of business next year. I should say sixth, so closing out my fifth year of business. It's now going to be really critical for that next 5-year plan to that personal brand and that public profile in a much more robust sense. And that includes building out a much more robust corporate presenter and TV personality. If I could end up finding myself, excuse me, the host of a game show on television, that is my ultimate goal. Once upon a time was become a cruise director, did that. And certainly if I found myself as as a game show host on television, it'd be another "Hey mom, I made it" kind of moment. But overall, generally, there's a lot of things in the pipeline. I'm looking at different things like building an event production company with a friend of mine at the moment, very early stages, sort of building out to not only just be someone as a talent operator, but also someone who can be a talent connector, an agency, a live producer, someone who actually creates the events, isn't just somebody who's just, part of them as I am now. It's kind of like my North Star for the next 5 years.
I love it. I love it. We're going to pop all the details so everyone can reach out to you. And if you want to go and listen and see it in reverse, so Nathan will get to be the host. So he hosts their Justice Plan winning TV show. So we're going to put the links in there as well. A couple of questions that we just asked, a little bit of fun, our guests. But I'm going to change it up for you. And I listened to this on a podcast before, and I really loved it. So you don't know who our next guest is. What question about business would you ask them?
I would ask them, what if someone was wanting to be in your career, listening right now, what's the one biggest piece of advice that you would give to that person?
Okay, so I'm going to ask that to our next guest.
And look forward to it.
Yeah, we're going to do that, like a sort of pay it forward sort of question for everyone. So thank you so much for everything that you do and for being here today and, really sharing your gifts with us. I truly do appreciate it.
Of course, no, I appreciate the time and the platform here as well. It's been both a privilege to represent the Justice Plan brand over the last 3 years strong, and of course also just being able to share my insights here today. It's a true privilege. It's sort of one of those pure reflection moments that I value in my career. So thank you for your time. It really means a lot.
Oh, my pleasure, Nathan. And remember, if you've got any questions about weddings, head over and ask Nathan. But also, too, if you want to have him as an MC for your event, honestly, he is amazing at what he does. So we're going to pop all the details of how you can reach out. So thank you again, Nathan, for being here today. Thank you to all of you who have tuned into this episode. Remember, if you've liked it, hit that like and subscribe button, put your comments below. And just remember to live life to the fullest every single day. Love and light to you all.